Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Checks and Balances TV. Today's program is entitled, New Bank Fees Got You Down? Let our Checks and Balances process help. So let's see how today's news may impact your financial future. New federal debit card rules went into effect on October 1st, reducing the fees financial institutions can charge merchants to process each debit card transaction, from an average of 44 cents to 21 cents. Major banks with more than $10 billion in assets have seen the amount of revenue made from debit card transactions cut in half as a result of these new federal rules. Unfortunately, for most Americans, this has forced many banks to find new ways to replace that lost revenue, and they're looking to you and me to fill the void. Bank of America recently announced it would start charging their depositors a $5 monthly fee to help offset this loss in revenue. As you can imagine, this set off a backlash from customers who are sick and tired of incurring additional fees, especially during these financially trying times. In the face of hard economic times and corporate greed, as demonstrated outside the halls of Wall Street lately, this latest move by some banks to nickel and dime their loyal depositors is coming to a boil. Okay, so what's really going on here? Let's check the facts using our Checks and Balances process. The Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act was signed into law in July of last year. Its goal was to impose the strictest financial regulations in the U.S. since the Great Depression and put an end to the too-big-to-fail era of protection for large financial institutions. The Durbin Amendment, named after Illinois Senator Dick Durbin, was one of the provisions later added to the Dodd-Frank Act, which made debit card transaction fees more reasonable and proportional. Debit card transaction fees paid by a merchant was averaging 44 cents per sale, according to the Better Business Bureau, and the Durbin Amendment gave the Federal Reserve the authority to regulate these fees. On June 29th of this year, the Fed issued a final ruling which established standards for debit card interchange fees. The provision became effective on October 1st and caps the maximum interchange fee at 21 cents per transaction. Bank of America is the largest financial institution in the U.S. and estimated that the cap on transaction fees would cost it approximately $2 billion annually in lost revenue. Their response was to charge its customers a new monthly fee of $5 for debit card transactions, beginning early next year. An additional $60 per year per customer would give Bank of America $3 billion a year in new revenue based on its 57 million depositors, providing the bank with $1 billion more than it was previously making. But Bank of America is not alone. Other major banks such as J.P. Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo are also testing $3 monthly debit card fees in select markets. And Atlanta-based SunTrust Bank began charging a $5 monthly fee to their customers this past summer. Okay, so now that we've checked the facts, let's balance this news using our Checks and Balances process to determine what action you should take today. Some have argued that the government's over-regulation of banks through the Dodd-Frank Act has resulted in banks simply passing along their loss in revenue to consumers. However, losing a significant amount of revenue has given major banks little choice but to charge extra fees to their customers. 2 weeks before revealing the new monthly debit card fee, Bank of America announced plans to cut 30,000 jobs as a part of a plan to save $5 billion through 2014, revealing that times are tough for banks as well. From a consumer standpoint, though, Americans have other choices. And Senator Durbin himself told Bank of America customers to, quote, vote with your feet and get the heck out of that bank. Although his amendment may result in a $3 billion revenue loss for the bank, he believes what Bank of America has done is an outrage, and a mass exodus of unhappy customers could be on their way out. A June poll conducted by Associated Press-GfK indicated that could in fact be the case, but that consumers are most likely to just switch their form of payment rather than change banks. 2/3 of those who took part in the poll said they are currently using debit cards more frequently than credit cards. However, 2/3 also said they would switch to another form of payment if they were charged a $5 monthly debit card fee. However, what banks are underestimating is the power of their customers, who may make a more significant change with who they bank with as a result of being forced to pay these monthly fees. Okay, so what's the bottom line here? In this current economic climate we find ourselves in, it seems as though we are constantly being nickel and dimed by the very companies we do business with. From companies like Bank of America, who will soon charge their customers $5 a month to use their own debit cards, to airlines charging travelers an extra money to check their bags, to major consumer goods companies who have downsized the contents of their product but still charge the same money. It's consumers who are ultimately paying the price. As CBTV celebrates our first-year anniversary, we want to remind you that Checks and Balances TV is all about bringing you balanced advice and financial truth so you can make informed financial decisions. Our Checks and Balances process is designed to give you a balanced perspective on all things financial, to teach you about other options available, and give you both sides to every story so you can take control of your finances and gain financial freedom. We work very hard to continuously give you the information you need to financially succeed. And we thank you for your support in making CBTV America's #1 source for balanced financial advice. Today's tip, tool, or technique is brought to you by Allianz Life Insurance Company of North America. And now for Matt's weekly financial tip, tool, or technique. It seems like every time you turn around, banks are charging their customers new fees. Fortunately, there are ways to avoid being overcharged by your bank by simply changing how you make your purchases. So here are 4 money-saving tips that can help you avoid additional debit card fees. Tip number 1, pay with cash or check. Before debit and credit cards became so popular, consumers had 2 main ways to pay for goods and services, cash or checks. Cash remains the easiest way to avoid paying fees, and using the bank's ATM to withdraw money and dodge third-party fees is an easy way to access your cash. And of course, checks are also a viable alternative for those who have checking accounts. Tip number 2, upgrade your account. Some banks will waive fees based on the type of account you have with them, so find out how you can qualify for this exemption. It may require maintaining a higher daily average balance, but there is certainly no harm in asking what your financial institution has to offer you. Tip number 3 is to change banks. If you are too frustrated with your current bank, there is nothing stopping you from switching to another bank. Big banks with more than $10 billion in assets are more likely to charge debit fees since they are the ones impacted directly by the Durbin Amendment. So consider putting your money in a local credit union or small community bank. Tip number 4 is use credit cards. And yes, I know credit cards have gotten a bad rap for charging high interest rates to consumers who do not pay off their balance in full every month. But many credit card companies now offer cash back incentives, which can add up over the course of the year. I even have family members who save up all their points and then cash them in November to pay for many of their Christmas gifts. With any of these tips, your ability to make smart financial decisions based on the information you gather will determine whether or not you have a successful financial future. And don't forget to follow our Checks and Balances program and system to stay focused on your long-term savings goals. Be sure to log on to our website and download our latest free report entitled The Truth About Wall Street, a free report that reveals the origins of Wall Street, where backroom deals and good old boy handshakes were the norm, and how today's Wall Street antics are still stranger than fiction. And finally, remember that only you can control your financial future. You can succeed. You just need confidence and determination. I'm Matthew J. Reddick from Checks and Balances TV. Until next week, dump debt, invest wisely, believe in yourself, and make it happen.